Have you ever heard a 5-year-old tell a story and it comes out sounding like this?
You want him to do you so much you could do anything?
Have you ever watched an anime that played out the same way? Well, I have, and I'm kinda sorry I did. Introducing Robotics Notes, an anime so schizophrenic it should own a motel in Oregon. It's not a terrible show by any stretch of the imagination, but it is a difficult one to follow. The writing, the pacing, some of it just seems random and sporadic. In this review, we'll go over the characters, the plot, and what I think are some very critical mistakes that make up Robotics Notes. Let's start with Akiho Sanomiya, a high school senior and head of the Robot Research Club at Tanegashima High School. She's a high-energy girl with a dream, to complete the construction of Gun Build 1, a giant model robot based off of a popular anime called Mobile Battler Gunvarel, a play on the Mobile Suit Gundam franchise. The Gunvarel model they're building was started by her sister over 10 years ago, and Akiho's sole focus is completing it. Up next, Kaito Yashio. Kaito is Akiho's closest and oldest friend. As children, they both fall victim to a mysterious incident which left them unconscious and subsequently granted them both special abilities. A top-ranked player in the game Kill Ballad, also based off of the Gunvarel show, Kaito spends his days with his head down even as a member of the Robot Research Club. Now we go into Subaru Hidaka. A second year at Tanegashima, Subaru is a skilled engineer with a huge passion for robotics. He eventually joins the ranks of our MCs at the Robot Research Club and quickly becomes a valuable asset. Having built competition robots himself, he's able to tell at a glance all the problems facing Gun Build 1. Rounding off our list of MCs is Kona Furuguri, an orphan and the creator of Kill Ballad. Kona is an exceptional programmer with a highly vested interest in the success of her game. She's also a pervy neat obsessed with BL, which brings out a more comical side to balance out her darker nature throughout the show. The plot for this show is kind of a tough one to nail down, so for this review, I'll just talk about the initial plot of the series. And yes, I did say the initial plot of the series. I do have to add this disclaimer though. While I was writing this review, I learned that this show is part of the Science Adventure series. As such, it's in the same universe and takes place a few years after the events of Steins Gate. Even though I haven't watched or played any of the Steins Gate or the Chaos Head properties, Robotics Notes the anime shares some very rudimentary and surface level ties with them. And it almost acts as kind of a standalone story. And from what I could find out, the games are more closely linked to the universe as a whole than the anime itself is. I will, however, watch the rest of the series, and if I've missed anything, I'll be sure to address it in an upcoming review. The Tanegashima Robotics Club is run by Akiho and to a lesser extent Kaito. They're both in their final year of high school, and they're nowhere near the completion of the Gun Build 1. The club doesn't have enough money to finish Gunvarel, and they don't have enough members to make the club a viable investment for the school, so the club is being shut down before the school year ends. In order to solve these problems, the club enters into a robotics competition that offers enough prize money to continue the build. But eventually more plots enter into the story, unraveling a mystery that threatens life itself, and brings every plot point that they bring up in this show into the anime's central story. Unfortunately, I don't feel like going into it because I believe that it's too much in the way of spoiler content, but I will cover my opinions on this in the conclusion, and to a lesser extent some of the plot points that pop up. Now, as I said, the show isn't terrible, but it does wear the viewer down to the point of not caring about what's going on, in my opinion. For instance, Kaito is supposed to be Akiho's best friend, but it seems that at every single turn, he refuses to do anything that would help her achieve her dream, and if he does, it's always reluctantly. Now, you might think this would lend for a good character arc for him, and it would, but he doesn't seem to have much of one with Akiho. Instead, he seems to buckle down at the most extreme circumstance, and just barely becomes a responsible friend when the Earth is literally in peril, and it's still with a fair amount of reluctance. Why is Kaito so disagreeable?
I don't know.
And the anime never really goes into it. Kona is another example of a character that I feel wasn't really done justice to. She's an example of trying to create a relatable character that brings levity to the story, but she grows to be annoying for one horrible trait. In about half of her lines, she speaks in only internet shorthand. Now, I don't care who you are. This wasn't cool in the early 2000s when millennials were doing it, and it's still not cool in 2022. I found myself turning into this guy.
It's time to stop! It's time to stop, okay? No more! Where the fuck are your parents? Who are your parents? I'm gonna call Child Protective Services. It's time to stop!
Another thing that I found positively annoying was that at some point, the story puts a giant pause button on the robotics in robotics notes and just decides to go with the notes instead. Now, to be fair, this anime does fall into the genre of mystery and sci-fi according to my anime list, but what I would consider to be the main plot of the show, the part of the show that they led with, the part of the show that they seem to want to invest so much of the character growth in, gets dwarfed for almost half of the series with no subtle segue into what is arguably the more interesting focus of the show. That more interesting plot of the show seems to come up in the last quarter of the entirety of this anime. And by that point, I just didn't care about any of it anymore. I didn't care about the club, I didn't care about the cast, and I didn't care about the impending doom that required vanquishing. I just wanted 11 hours of my life back, and for something to make sense for longer than 3 minutes. Now, there were some funny moments, there were some cool moments, but for the most part, I was just bored of the seemingly contrived shock and awe they seem to shove into every single turning point that leads to a brand new plot. Almost like Andy not wanting to play with Woody anymore, they just toss the old one to the floor until they're ready to pick it back up again. As a standalone anime, Robotics Notes gets a 5, maybe a 6 out of 10 for me. Now, would I recommend it? Yes, I would, but mostly to people interested in the science adventure series as a whole, or anyone getting into the games as well as the anime to round out their knowledge of the universe, as this is a prequel to the video game Robotics Notes Dash. If it was a question of whether or not I'd recommend this to just about any anime viewer, even ones getting into anime, I'd say maybe. It's not a terrible anime, like I said, and it is one that's kind of fun, and if you can look past all of the issues that I think are present in the show, I think you'd really enjoy it. That's all for me today. Let me know what you think in the comments. Please hit the like button if you like. Please subscribe if you're interested in more content like this. We'll be doing many more reviews on this channel. Some we'll like, some we won't like so much. But thank you guys for joining me, and I'll see you all in the next one.